I have I have loved my life, and I think who I am is because of the path that I've taken.
Mm.
So I think if I were to undo a part of it, it might not lead to the same end.
From the IT company, it's made right here, the stories of East Tennessee founders, creators, and builders. From the idea behind it to the impact it had on the community, their employees, and their personal lives, we're taking you behind the scenes of the movements they built. Hey, welcome back to part two of my chat with my good friend Ronni Chandler, one of the original founding members of Project Grad here in Knoxville. Part one, we heard really a lot of just her incredible story of growing up and being a single mom, getting married, just kind of all the cool stuff, and really some of the tough stuff in her life. And in part two, we get to hear of the transition into her professional career, but also still the weavings of great just nuggets of truth and inspiration and just the things that she's learned and the way that she has helped build our community. So excited for you to hear this part, and here we go.
I told you it's divine assignment. I know that this is what I'm
Yeah.
supposed to do. And so I came to grad as the program director. And then when Jerry retired again in 2014, the grad board named me as executive director at that time. I've been here from the beginning, key part of helping to frame
Mm.
the program that is grad. And
I think an
so yeah,
important part of the story too. You went to Austin East, you grew up in that community, and I want to remind people who don't know this, but Austin East is a gem of a school,
yes.
and there are young men and women at Austin East and Fulton specifically, just because I spent a lot of time at both those schools, who are rock stars, who just need the bridges and the connections. And you're an example, of somebody who has taken advantage of those things and been able to leverage connections and relationships and hard work and all their stuff. But I just want to remind people in the community just for a moment that sometimes we forget about those two schools. We may think about them athletically periodically, but they're just a gem.
Thank you for saying that. And that is absolutely true. One of the things we continue to emphasize to our young people, greatness does come out of the center city. All of my brothers and sisters and I went to Austin East High School.
Yeah.
My daughter, Dr. Nicole Chandler, is a graduate of Austin East High School. And so Austin East and Fulton, there are amazing kids that are brilliant. They're navigating a lot of things that are not of their making, but absolutely, if they just need the opportunity to shine, and they will rise to the occasion. That really makes me think about, one of the hardest parts of running grad is to help the team stay hopeful and encouraged
Mm.
when they're frustrated. But because when we provide opportunities for young people and they don't take advantage of it,
Yeah.
and we can't make them, because we can't want it more for them than they want it for themselves. And so it's hard to see sometimes when they don't take advantage of opportunities that are there. But then we try to get underneath, well, why is that? Why are they not taking advantage of that? And there's always a why underneath.
Yeah.
And so we have to dig down a
Yeah.
little deeper. But we, as you mentioned, these are young people with tremendous potential, but a lot of them are navigating concentrated community challenges that are outside of their control. And so it's kind of hard to move through that, but it's possible. Securing a sustainable funding base and partnerships for continuing to provide opportunities and support for a population of students with tremendous potential, but they're navigating a lot of stuff, and donor fatigue is very real. And we serve zip codes with deep challenges that we can't make it better at home. And
Mm.
so bringing donors and funders and partners along that journey and maintaining that over time, it's not an easy thing. But remembering the why and always holding that
Mm.
up. And for us, it's kids. It's what about the children? That's the plumb line that guides what we do. And to help people who have opportunities see that the opportunities that they have, they can provide to young people and benefit both. And so it's helping to make those connections and help people see the connection. Like Grad has a business case. And the business case for Grad is that the diverse workforce that we say we want in the region, business is going to have to help develop and create that workforce. And those kids are in my schools. And the leaders, I say this all the time, the leaders we need tomorrow are in our public schools today. And so we're going to have to provide the support for that. But it's not easy, in 2018, when the renewal of the grad contract came up, we were on a 12-year contract, then it went into a 5-year extension. And then in 2018, it was time to enter a new contract. And that came at a very difficult and contentious budget year. And for the most part, it was good people having to make tough decisions. And it was proposed that Grad be eliminated as a budget savings. And so people from across the community pushed back and they took a stand for kids. They got more than 1,000 people rode and called and stood up and showed up and spoke up at a school board meeting that lasted until almost 1 o'clock in the morning. Filled the city county assembly room to overflow with people outside beating on the windows. And as a result, funding for Grad was reduced by half, but it was added back to the budget, and a new 5-year agreement was passed. And that was very hard, and it was very public, and it was very humbling, and some parts of it were hurtful, but it was very worth it. Because our kids in the Center City Public Schools, they are brilliant, and they must have equitable opportunities. And so we saw them, they fought for themselves, and then they saw a whole community fight for them too. So that was probably a professional low and high at the same time. So then fast forward from April 2018 to April 2020, and as we look to the future, as Grad turns 20 this year in 2021.
Wow.
And so a more sustainable funding strategy was needed, and philanthropy is changing. Longtime donors are reconsidering their giving as they age, and the next generation of donors, they don't give in the same way. And industry wants to see a direct value for their investment in nonprofits. And so considering all of that, and Knox Education Foundation was created in April 2020 in the midst of a pandemic as a new anchor nonprofit that combines several successful programs and creates a platform for doing even larger things for public education. And Project Grad, community schools, Teacherpreneur, and Leaders for Readers are all part of that Knox Ed platform. But again, the launch of Knox Ed has been stalled by COVID, as so many other things have been. So that's been a challenge. A couple of things that have happened to provide more technology into the hands of kids has been the provision of Chromebooks for every kid in the district. So every kid has their own device. Now, every kid didn't have internet access at home, and so an eKnox task force was created to look at how do we make sure that every kid has internet access of some kind at their house, and really working toward making broadband access available to everybody. Long term, it ought to be like a utilities. It ought to be like water and electricity. But and so the eKnox task force has worked to make sure that there is connectivity in the homes of kids. Well, as far as the work, how it has changed what we do, we had to figure out how do we keep serving kids in a virtual setting. And so we actually have 3 populations of students. As school came back, we have the kids in person in the building. We have kids who are in virtual school only. And then we have kids when they go into quarantine, they're not just in the regular virtual school with the rest of the kids who are tracking on at the same pace. They're a third population of students. So our one staff has learned to work with all 3 of these populations of students and their parents So we're doing things, double time. Whatever we do for kids in person in the building, we have to do online for kids virtually, and sometimes simultaneously, sometimes recorded, sometimes a separate thing later. But making sure that kids have the same access, although the delivery model looks very different. So we're doing a lot of hybrid stuff. We've learned since the school started up, the team on the ground had to learn more than a dozen platforms and apps to be able to support kids through the way that the teachers and the schools were supporting. Canvas is a big one that they do. And so at both of particularly our high schools, Grad has a channel on the Canvas accounts for the schools. And so just working with the schools to support the delivery of what they, trying to get information to kids and families, keeping kids connected and engaged, checking on them. We've got a subset of kids who they don't have a parent at home overseeing their work, making sure they get online and get their
Yeah.
assignments and stuff. And so some of our kids, our staff are just literally doing a check-in with, say, are you doing your homework? Just checking to make sure you're okay today.
Yeah.
Just wanted to let you know that, somebody cares about you and cares about your success. The emotional toll on kids themselves by being virtual, and even those in person having to be socially distanced, this is so tough on kids. And it's not just our K-12 kids, we're seeing it through our post-secondary kids, for many of whom they've been completely virtual since mid-March. They've never come back in person.
Yeah.
Even we've got kids who are on their campus, but their classes are virtual. They're living in dorm space, but their classes are virtual. And so our post-secondary success coaches literally are doing scheduled emotional wellness check-ins with them. They're doing some social hangouts. We just did a mental health 101 panel on a Sunday afternoon, say it's okay not to be okay. And just really helping kids struggle through the emotional side of being distant, at a time in their personal development when being with each other is everything. Being with your friends in adolescence is everything. It's just everything. And then navigate, the whole social media space, which even for adults, people put their highlight reel on Facebook. When you're having a day that sucks, you don't post that. And so helping young people understand that everybody has those bad days.
Something that maybe folks don't realize about grad, you said it, the post-secondary. I mean, that it's not just about get them out of high school and move on. It's get them all the way into career.
About a third of our kids, they're still first generation. And so helping, and then even some were first generation high school graduate, not just even post-secondary. And then we have kids who are from families that are undocumented. And so that's a whole set of challenges for those young people, because they cannot access federal financial aid. They can't get Tennessee Promise. They can't even get public assistance. And we have a huge population of refugee families who are relocating to the country, usually from war circumstances. And so helping those young people all the way through some form of post-secondary, they just need somebody to get through and to connect to resources on their own campus, so that they're aware of the support that's available to them, and making sure they're connected to that.
Looking back, knowing everything that you know, would you do all this all over again?
If I could know what I know, if I would go back and do it again. If I could know, I would be able to retain the knowledge I have on this side of it.
Yeah.
I would go back. I might do some things differently if I knew I could end up at the same place.
Yeah.
But I have loved my life, and I think who I am is because of the path that I've taken. So I think if I were to undo a part of it, it might not lead to the same end. And so there might be some things I might do better. I would learn a different language very young in life, probably Spanish. I would just be anchor for my life is my faith. And that connects to every single other thing It's tenets, or, that's probably I would say the most interesting thing about my life. It's
Yeah.
that I have gone through all I've gone through and I still have joy. And
Yeah.
it's because of a sustaining Christ-centered faith that anchors every part of my life. The guide for my relationships comes from that place.
Mm.
And so for me, that is the anchor. And I have what I call my 5 alive strategies. Adequate rest and sleep. That's the first one, because the body heals when we sleep.
Yeah.
And then daily devoted time. For me, that's in the morning. For other people, it might be other times of the day. Drinking water. Most of our body is comprised of water. And if you look at the benefit of water to mental acuity and how sharp we can be emotionally and mentally, water is huge. And then healthy eating choices. Now, I don't ace that one all the time, but I do try to intentionally eat, balanced food. And then movement of sometimes something that you like. It might be running, it might be walking, it might be jet skiing, whatever it is for you. Do that and commit to doing that. So those 5 things are what I call my 5 alive.
What's next for you? I mean, you've been doing this for a while. You could have already retired if you stayed at Pellissippi State. I'm sure there's some, plan, and if you can't share it, that's fine too. But do you know what's next or what you're thinking about?
Well, it's interesting. I think about that a lot because people ask me, a lot of my friends and contemporaries are already retired or are retiring. And I think about, what would I retire to do? Doing work that I love and that makes a difference in the world, and I get paid to do it. And I live in the city with my only granddaughter. So, people sometimes retire to go live and be with their grandchildren. Well,
Yeah.
I've had the privilege of being in her life, and she'll be graduating from high school this year. So, or people retire to travel. And Tim and I decided not to wait to do that. We've been to Hawaii. We've taken 5 cruises. We've been to Aruba, the Virgin Isles, West Indies, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, the Bahamas, Mexico, Canada. We decided we weren't going to wait till we got old to travel. We wanted to enjoy it while we had energy to enjoy
Yeah.
it. So we started as soon as we didn't have kids at home. We're a couple years out from the end of the initial grad contract for present. And then, the Knox Ed Foundation, as it ramps up with an eye toward equity and innovation, there are some exciting things coming there. So,
Yeah.
I still see myself in education for kids, particularly kids who are brilliant, who are navigating challenging circumstances. And because the other things I'm still doing, I'm still seeing my grandchild, we're still traveling, I'm still writing. And so, what's next is some newness in where I am. It is such a privilege to be working for the village that helped raise me.
Yeah.
And that's and people can move and should move wherever they feel drawn to, but somebody's got to stay. To be able to have the privilege of serving this village that helped raise me is an incredible honor.
In your life, you've learned more from your successes or more from your failures so far?
I would say neither. I have learned most from defining moments that I would not consider either success or failure.
Hmm.
And so some of those for me are like finishing high school in the top 10% of my class as a teen mom, and finishing college twice as an adult student with a full-time job and a family, and active in my church and doing it with honors, and the disability of my husband when he was only 29 and becoming a working caregiver, and living through the death of a child, and experiencing breast cancer 9 years ago and living beyond that moment, writing a book that encourages broken believers, and leading grad through a very public crisis, and now leading grad into stability in a challenging but exciting sustainability structure that is a corporate culture. So all of that is part of what I call my other resume. And all of us have one. And so I would say I've learned most from neither success or failure, but from those defining moments. And what I learned is sometimes you just have to do the hard thing.
Mm.
And hard things are just hard. And people can be difficult, but with God, truly, all things really are possible.
What a story. I love having a chance to chat with Ronni and really unpack her story and the story of Project Grad. Hope it gives just a ton of hope and inspiration to folks listening. Please share it with people. I think Ronni's story is so incredible and just so pertinent for really our times and any time. So, and please support Knox Education Foundation and Project Grad. They're doing incredible work in our community, and so thrilled to have Ronni on the show. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.